Just a quick polling of the audience before I get started. Any Army folks in the audience? Former Army? Good? Yeah, great. I know we have a whole bunch of Air Force in the back. Air Force?
Go Navy, beat our...
Okay, we have one Navy guy. Any other Navy folks? Marines? Coast Guard? Okay, good. Good. We have Marines. I will make fun of the Army, just like Ira. I didn't realize he was a former NSA guy, but I make fun of the Army. I make fun of the Air Force as well in this presentation. So we have a whole bunch of Air Force guys. So come on up front. The Air Force guys actually like you up front, right? If you look at my name there, my hacker name, Cozy Panda. Ira gave it away, right? Now you know what Cozy Panda is coming from. I'm Chinese. So he says. Advanced persistent threat, perhaps. Maybe you'll gauge that after this talk. Really, the presentation I'm going to give today is primarily on encouraging innovation, thinking outside the box. My alternate title is Start by Thinking Inside the Box, but hopefully you'll understand why I'm doing that while this presentation is going on. But I'm going to leverage a lot of what Ira talked about. Right, a lot of the stuff about advanced persistent threats, and the great thing is I see some kids in here. So I actually designed this presentation for a K through 9 STEM class. My presentation before was more like Ira's, right? The standard presentation, what we were taught in the military to use. I violated all those rules. I'm using my K through 12 STEM presentation, and hopefully you'll get some positive feedback. Do not do this though if you're in the military. I'm senior enough in my career that I don't care anymore. I'm giving the presentation that fits my audience the best. And so really what I'm talking about in cyber innovations is what Ira was talking about. How do we start thinking about cyber defense in a way that makes sense, right? That can combat the threats for our cyber offense, the advanced persistent threats, right? Ira sort of questioned whether they are advanced and whether they are persistent, and whether, well, they definitely are threats, but how sophisticated they are. Before I get started, though, I generally don't introduce myself with a title slide. I introduce myself as the slides go on. And so I work for an organization called the Army Cyber Institute. And most folks, probably anyone here of the Army Cyber Institute? Okay, we know. Okay, military folks know about it. Well, if you're not in the military and you don't know about the Army Cyber Institute, we started in 2012, started by, at that point, Secretary of the Army McCune and Chief of Staff of the Army, General Odiero. And they saw this threat in the cyber domain. And what they wanted for us to do was to create impactful partnerships and build the body of knowledge on cyber defense, cyber offense. Now, Ira, right, talking a lot about offensive threats. A lot of what the NSA does is classified. At the Army Cyber Institute, 90–95% of what we do is unclassified. We publish. And one of the reasons we're located, we're co-located at West Point, United States Military Academy. So my day job, I'm doing research on cyber defense, mostly cyber defense, and on my night job, I teach cadets, and I teach systems engineering. But the thing about teaching at West Point, this is my third tour back at West Point. I tell my cadets it's much better the second time around. Right? The cadets, they just have no time to really concentrate on a lot of things. You know, you read those U.S. News World Reports, they cram about 25 or 26 hours worth of work in a cadet work day. It's true. I was a cadet as well, so I tell all my cadets it's much better the second time around. I'm there now for my third time, and it's a great assignment. Now, we do have a new director. Colonel Andy Hall is our new director. He took over a year and a half ago. So he proposed a new mission. And this will probably take effect, I thought it would take effect at the end of this summer, but we're still using our current mission statement. But this is our proposed mission statement. Not too different, right? We're still doing research. In this case, we've specified interdisciplinary research, shaping future thought. And when I saw this last bullet underlined, develop innovative solutions for enabling cyber resiliency, I took a meta approach to this statement. I'm trying to understand how we innovate to begin with. Right? We have a lot of researchers doing a lot of innovation that a lot of these talks you're going to hear about today, tomorrow. A lot of our research is doing the same thing, right? Working with drones, hacking into Internet of Things devices, breaking the locks. Yeah, so all these all these playpens that we have here in HackerCon, Secure West Virginia. We have a lot of those labs too. And so our researchers, some are military, some are civilians. We call them Title 10 civilian professors. And we play around with a lot of this thing. But really all this is geared for is to improve the cybersecurity of our entire nation. Now, the interesting thing about the Army Cyber Institute, I'm new to the cyber world. I'm a military intelligence officer. Yeah, I'm trained in signals intel. That's why they slotted me. That was the qualification to get slotted for this job. But I really only had one signal intelligence job. I didn't even work in the NSA. Right? I was a company commander. And all my soldiers did signal intelligence work. I just managed them. But we have a bunch of guest lecturers come in. We have a lot of guest visitors come visit the ACI. A lot of them from Palo Alto, a lot of them from Silicon Valley, a lot of high-tech folks. And when they visited our location, we are housed in the Lady Cliff dormitories. Lady Cliff College used to be situated right outside the gates of West Point, the main gate of West Point. It had financial troubles, so the military academy bought up the land, bought up the property. And so our organization is housed inside the Lady Cliff dormitories. And so when we had this tech CEO come tell us, when he visited us and we were showing him around, you guys are a startup. You guys are we're housed in a warehouse. You guys are housed in a dormitory. You definitely are startups. Now again, I know cyber time is a little different, right? 5 years, that's ancient for cyber time, for a government organization. 5 years, 6 years going on now. We're still in government time. We're still what we call a startup. It's even worse. One of my colleagues calls it worse. Worser. Not only are we in a women's dormitory, old women's dormitory, our dormitory is getting renovated. So we're in trailers right now, right outside the dormitory. So it's a worser. But that's sort of the nature of being in a new organization. Now, when I talk about innovation, I look at innovation differently. I think of innovation not as one monolithic entity. Instead of looking at this one type of innovation, and you're going to get this, I think Ira introduced it a lot. That's why it was great having him talk before me. He talked about this level of sophistication, right? I'm talking about whether it's tech heavy or whether it's tech light, right? Not very sophisticated. That's one of my axes, one of my criteria. The second criteria I use is what the innovation is targeted for. Is it targeted for existing markets, or is it targeting for new markets, new users, underserved users? And so if I break this up, any business majors in the audience? MBAs? So MBAs know you can break the world into 4 quadrants, right? That's all I'm doing here. So the alternate talk of my title, I told you it's going to be innovating by first learning how to think inside the box. The alternate title is it's hip to be square, right? This truly is a square. It's not a box yet. So it's hip to be square. Kids are still here. That's all right. So if we look about this quadrant here on that low tech side, but existing users, right? I call that sustaining types of innovation. These are innovations that meet the customer needs. And it's not just any customer. It's generally the biggest customer. It's your customers that have the greatest margins to a company's business, right? You listen to the people who pay the most. And so it's really the big customers are where it's driving sustaining innovations. Now, if we go to high tech types of innovation for existing markets, I call that evolutionary. So think Darwin. Okay? I call it evolutionary incremental types of innovation. Again, it's existing markets. You're still targeting folks that you can do market research on, and you're trying to innovate to capture that market share. What about this high-tech new markets? Does that even exist? Are there innovations like that? The Air Force guys know about this, right? The Air Force does this really well. I call it breakthrough or jump in the curve types of innovation. The Air Force does this particularly well. Of the DoD services, they do it perhaps the best. Air Force partner with DARPA. They do breakthrough innovations probably the best for our nation. I'm going to come back to this jumping the curve in a little bit, in a few slides. What about this last quadrant? Right, I was talking about this. Right? Hackers are doing this. Threats are doing this. Right? It's the unsophisticated attacks trying to get into our systems. Yeah, I call this revolutionary innovations. There are a couple Harvard Business School professors, Clayton Christensen and Joseph Bauer, they coined disruptive. But the problem with their distinction is that they mix up revolutionary and my breakthrough. They just call it disruptive innovations. And I want to make a distinction between low-tech and high-tech innovations. Because our government, I'll tell you right now, yeah, I think I have a slide for this. Our government, right, a lot of people think of only high-tech innovations, right? That's the only types of innovations there are. I'm arguing there are low-tech innovations as well. And we, hopefully in this audience, I think this is the right audience. I'm trying to convince generals, right, military officers that low-tech innovations exist, and we should be pursuing those. What's the problem is that a lot of our military generals, a lot of our Congress members, a lot of our leaders, right, they only think of high-tech solutions to our problems, right? Ira said it. We're getting breached. We're getting penetrated. I need AI to fix that. I need automation to fix that. I'm not looking at detection. I'm not looking at response. I'm looking at this bright, shiny gadget that's going to fix all my protection worries. That's a concern, right? Because Ira brought it up perfectly. That's only one of 3 components of advanced persistent security. That's what he coined it. That's terrific. I took a picture of that. That's terrific. I'm going to try to get his book. Now, I'm trying to encourage this other side, right? The low tech. And again, I have this picture of a spaceship here, right? Just so that, you know, it's high-tech stuff, right? Think sci-fi. I'm hoping with this audience, we can look to the past, right? It's not just the future. We can look to the past sometimes, figure out some innovative techniques for cyber problems, particularly for cyber defense. Okay, so what I'm thinking of these 4 types of innovation, I like to use analogies to solidify in my mind what each of these innovations are. So for me, sustaining innovations, I'm thinking Spock. So if you've ever watched Star Trek, the original one, not the J.J. Abrams where it's the alternate universe, but the original Star Trek, I still like the new Star Trek, but I really can't stand the new generation or next generation. I think Voyager got close to the original Star Trek theme. But I'm thinking Spock, right? Spock gives Captain Kirk the highest probability of success, the most likely to succeed course of action. It's all about probabilities, all about logic. And so that's really what I think of sustaining innovations. It's about efficiency gains. You're trying to maximize your profits, trying to maximize your margins, so you focus on the best probability courses of action. Now, on the evolutionary side, any Mad Magazine fans? Have you seen any Mad Magazines? Do you recognize a Spy vs. Spy? It's online now. They don't have the magazine anymore, but they still have the cartoons online. So if you can find them, they're great. Because you see these spies, right? The black spy is trying to kill the white spy. Not just defeat him, they're trying to kill each other. And so sometimes in one issue, right, or one serial, the black spy wins. The next issue, the white spy wins. But all they're doing is trying to outwit each other, outsmart each other, right? Usually with some type of Rube Goldberg device, some type of complicated trap or mechanism to kill each other. Yeah, it's a little violent, but it's cartoon, right? Like Ren and Stimpy. Or Itchy and Scratchy, right? That's probably a better one. So I'm thinking Mad Magazine. What about breakthrough? Breakthrough innovations. Well, for breakthrough, I'm thinking James Bond. And particularly, I'm thinking Pierce Brosnan James Bond. Yeah, Daniel Craig, yeah, in Casino Royale, he's trying to get revolutionary, right? He's fighting with his hands. He's not using all the devices. But come on, the last 3 James Bonds, right? Spectre, where are the other 2? Quantum of Solace. Skyfall. He's getting the devices too, right? He even had this. He was battling cyber threats in one of them. Right? He's getting the briefcase that has all these cool devices from the Quartermaster Division of MI6. Okay, so the wealth of the British Commonwealth or the wealth of the United Kingdom affords James Bond all these cool gadgets. What about on this revolutionary side? Can we think of a spy that's on the revolutionary side? Low tech. I'm thinking MacGyver. Yeah, MacGyver, right? Now, you probably don't know MacGyver. I know there's a reboot. I think it's still on. The reboot, I hear, is terrible. But MacGyver, right? I did see one episode of the reboot. It was actually after one of my talks. I just had to make sure that it was still the same MacGyver. I saw one episode. I saw the billboards for it, right? The public affairs, wherever they're trying to promote it, promotional items. I saw 2 characters on the MacGyver, so I didn't get it. So I watched one episode just to make sure the same thing. Yeah, I saw him take out what? What does MacGyver have?
Paperclip?
Yeah, he's using whatever's in his pocket, right? But he usually has that Swiss Army knife. Yeah, so the episode I saw, he was being strangled, and he used a Swiss Army knife to cut the garden hose. So I said, okay, that's MacGyver. I turned to, so it's 10 minutes of MacGyver. New MacGyver, I saw it. I verified it. Yeah, it's MacGyver. Now, if you don't know MacGyver, you possibly know Jason Bourne. Have you seen? Oh, you don't know Jason Bourne? Ah, you gotta watch Jason Bourne. So MacGyver, Jason Bourne, new things to put on your wish list. Amazon Prime's got them all. So ask your dad and mom. Hold on, I'm going to give you some even better ones. So Jason Bourne, right? Jason Bourne is using whatever's at his disposal, his own wits, to save his own life, or his girlfriend at whatever episode it's in, right? It's a different girl every time. So those are my revolutionary characters I think of. Now, I told you I'm a military intelligence officer. One of these characters really is not a spy, right? When you think of military intelligence, right, think of IRA, think of spies, even cyber spies. Yeah, Spock, even though I like Star Trek, Spock really doesn't belong here, right? He's sci-fi. He really should be in that high-tech area, right? So Spock really doesn't belong here. So I'm thinking Mission Impossible. You know, have you seen any of the Mission Impossibles? Mission Impossible, okay. So, but I'm not thinking Tom Cruise, right? Tom Cruise Mission Impossible is Breakthrough, right? Remember he's climbing that tower with that glove? Yeah, it slips a few times, but that's high-tech stuff. That's breakthrough innovations. And it doesn't always work, right? It's falling, and he doesn't have two gloves, right? One of them fell, so he only has one glove. He's trying to climb with one glove. That's tough. Take it from me, it's tough. Now, I say Tom Cruise, and I say Mission Impossible because it's really... Do you remember Paris in Mission Impossible? Sound's coming off. Paris. In the original Mission Impossible, this is what I want you to watch. On Amazon Prime, all the 5 seasons of the original Mission Impossible are there, and they're terrific. Now, Paris, right, is the master of disguises. He speaks like 10 different languages. It's all in English. Yeah, it's just a different accent for the benefit of the audience. But he is the master of disguises. He's conning people. That's all he's doing. He's using his wits, and he's an actor, right? He's an actor who helps the U.S. government or the Impossible Missions forces to complete their tasks. In this case, conning foreign governments into doing things that the U.S. wants them to do. Now, it's not only Paris, right? It's the entire crew, pretty much. They're all pretty much actors, portraying actors in this series. And they're so good at their acting abilities that they can do what they do, right? They're fooling organized crime, they're fooling foreign governments, they can speak the language, they know all about them, they've studied their threats, so they can fool them. Now, the other thing about Mission Impossible that I like is they actually span other areas. Remember Barney? Now, in the new Mission Impossible, it's Simon Pegg, right? He's the guy with all the gadgets. But remember Barney? Barney had all the electronic devices. So that's more of the breakthrough. And again, the great thing with the old series was that usually the electronic devices, all that breakthrough equipment, it tended to break down, right? So these guys had to think on their feet and out with the criminals, out with their adversaries in a different way. That was always the plot twist. The high-tech stuff would generally fail. Now again, I told you it generally spans all these spaces in Mission Impossible. Now what I'm thinking, this was the guy in charge of the Mission Impossible team, right? He's evolutionary because, right, all he's doing, you remember the initial sequence of every Mission Impossible? He's picking his team. He's got a dossier of all these folks, all these characters, even more, right? He's got about 100 of these characters, and he's picking the best ones for the mission. So Peter Phelps is looking at the threat at hand, and he's trying to one-up them by picking the best team out of this great, efficient lineup that he's got. Now, the original Peter Phelps was Stephen Hill. If you watch the first season, any Law & Order fans? He's the DA, right? Stephen Hill played the first Peter Falk. Right? He played the original team leader. So he was actually assembling the teams. So he was the one actually doing the revolutionary ideas, getting the team together. Now again, I am a Tom Cruise fan. I know you watched Mission Impossible, so I am a Tom Cruise fan, so I don't want to diss Tom Cruise too much, right? There's another Tom Cruise movie where he's revolutionary. Can anyone guess what that one is? Well, perhaps this will help. Now, I have to show this intro to this movie because I wouldn't have believed it unless I saw it myself through the intro. Can anyone figure out now?
Top Gun.
Yeah, Top Gun, right? Yeah. So how is Top Gun related to revolutionary innovations? I got my Navy friend here. I give a plug to the Navy here. I give a diss to the Air Force. So, let's see. History tells me this. I'm not making it up. So we have Tom Cruise, that we knew. Now Kelly McGillis, right? When you see Kelly McGillis, yeah, Top Gun. Yeah, this thing. Now I'll blow it up a little bit. Let's see. Let me blow this up a little bit. So this comes from the intro of the Top Gun movie, right? In March of 1969, the Navy established this school. Okay. The interesting thing was in 1968, if you read history, I didn't realize this until I actually went back to this movie. If you read history, this is the amazing thing. Benjamin Lambeth did a great job. He wrote a book called Transformation of American Air Power, and he lists Vietnam as one of those pivotal moments for our air forces. Not Air Force, but air forces. In this case, Navy and Air Force. And in the Vietnam War, we were suffering so many casualties, even though we had a success ratio of 3 to, we were shooting down 3.7, right? We were shooting down 3.7 Russian MiG-21s and MiG-17s to every one of our F-4 Phantoms. From a mathematical perspective, from a military officer, that's good, right? 3 to 1 is actually what you're looking for. So this is actually pretty good. The problem is, what is Russia's military based on? Mass. They are based on mass. They have infinitely more than we do. So our Department of Defense figured out if we cannot sustain not only our pilots, we can't sustain the equipment. We can't build enough F-4 Phantoms to compete against the Russian, Vietnam War, right? We were fighting Russian pilots. The Russians were going to overwhelm us. They were going to obliterate our Air Force. So we stopped air operations in 1968. We didn't resume until a year later, 1969. The Navy, let me tell you what the Air Force did first, because that's, right, the Air Force, I told you, they're great at breakthrough. What's the first thing the Air Force said that we need? Air Force General said, better planes. We need faster planes. We need weapon systems that range better than the MiG-17s, MiG-21s. So that's what the Air Force did. They went breakthrough. The Air Force, the Navy, they went low-tech. We said, let's train our pilots better. Dogfighting skills. We know our aircraft are just as effective as MiG-17s, MiG-19s. We just need better pilots. We lost this art of dogfighting, right? It wasn't until really not a whole lot of air fights over Korea. We had air dominance over Korea. Yeah, we really didn't do dogfights until World War II. So from World War II, 1942, up until Vietnam, 65, right? All those pilots had no skills in dogfighting, no experience. So the Navy said, let's start this school, right? Called Top Gun. Let's look what happened to the Air Force. When they started back operations in 1969, a year later, it was about 11 or 13 months later, they actually dipped. Right? They had better F-4 Phantoms. They had new models, newer weapon systems, longer range, better thrust. They actually dipped a little, right? I'm a mathematician, systems engineering, I teach systems engineering. So it's not, right, it's statistically insignificant. It's about the same, so no real change. What happened to the Navy? Any guesses? Yeah, not only did it go up, 13-1. That is amazing. That is a revolutionary success. Because think about it. For the Top Gun school, if you remember Top Gun the movie, who got sent to that school? Did every pilot go? Who got sent? The best pilot. How did Maverick get sent? Was he the best in that squadron? He was the second best. Cougar was the best. Right? But Cougar got PTSD because that Russian MiG got missile lock on him while they were doing training exercises, or really it was combat air patrol. But so he said, I can't do it, and I'm resigning my commission. So guess who got bumped up? Who's the ship captain of that carrier? Donald Pleasance, right? Great actor, right? Donald Pleasance. He can't believe he's sending Maverick to Top Gun, right? Because Maverick is Maverick. That's his call sign. He's a Maverick. So 13-1. So not every pilot went through this school. Same thing in Vietnam. At that time, it was about a 10-week course. Right now, it's about 8-week course. But at that time, in 1968, 1969, about a 10-week course. Not every pilot went. The idea was that the pilots who went back to their squadrons after 10 weeks. They would train the other pilots. They were the emissaries of all the dogfighting training they got. Right? If you remember the Top Gun, how Maverick is, they've got the figures. Who are they fighting? Maverick, Iceman. Who's the OP4, the opposing forces in Top Gun? Viper and Jester, right? Tom Skerritt and Michael Ironside. Those are two actors. Yeah, so they're trying to best, in this case, the opposing forces. And again, the opposing forces are using Russian techniques. They're using Russian dogfighting techniques. They're trying to get our pilots to outmaneuver them. 13-1, that's amazing. I see that. That's revolutionary success. Okay, so this notion of revolutionary innovation. I told you, right, up until this point, I really should have called this, right, it's hip to be square, right? It's just a square box. So how do I make this a box? How do I turn a square into a box? How do I turn a square into a cube? Do you know how? I have two axes right now. How many do I have to add to make it a cube? Right now it's 2 dimensions. I want to make it 3 dimensions, right? So I need to add one more axis. So in this case, I'm going to add one axis. I'm going to call it offset potential. So when we're talking about innovations that have the potential to dramatically change the environment you're in, that's clear, right? It's the ones in top. It's revolutionary breakthrough innovations. So when we're talking, right, when your CEOs, when your bosses, they're telling you to innovate, they're not telling you to go innovate in the sustaining and incremental side. They're telling you to do it in the revolutionary breakthrough side. That's where you have the potential to change the environment. Change cyber defense. If you want to really change cyber defense, you want to go up. If you want to maintain our security levels, right, and Ira said it's not good right now, right? We're focused on protection, not instead of all 3 areas, right? The detection and then the response. Well, that's sustaining and evolutionary. Okay? So this is actually I still don't have numbers, but this would be a more representational example, a graph of what this chart would look like if I had this 3rd axis. Okay? What if I change this offset potential now to probability of success? It's still a box. Right? But where do I get the most success? Which innovations generate the highest probabilities of success? Well, it's the bottom. It's the opposite now, right? It's this, right? This is the low-hanging fruit. It's existing markets. We can do market research. We can get bank funding. Banks don't like to fund things on top, right? They like to show a dedicated plan, a financial plan. We can do that for sustaining and evolutionary innovation. It's hard to do. So if you're doing stuff in the revolutionary breakthrough, I would not recommend going to a bank. That's why knowing about innovations in this framework helps you to get better success knowing which quadrant it's in. Right? Don't go to a bank if you're doing revolutionary breakthrough innovation. If you're doing breakthrough, where do you get the money from? If it's not a bank, where do you get it from? Government, DC, right? I told you the Air Force does a great job, DARPA does a great job. You get it from smart governments, right? Not all governments are smart. Smart governments spend on breakthrough innovations. So where do you get funding for revolutionary innovations? The DC give a lot? I would go ask all the vendors out here in the vendor space, ask them how they're getting funding. Anyone watch Shark Tank? 99% of those innovations are revolutionary, disruptive. They're coming up with things, usually for themselves, that they think they have a niche market for. Right? Shark Tank, you're getting angel investors, you're getting venture capitalists, you're getting bridge financing. You're not getting from banks. If you're doing revolutionary innovations, talk to the vendor space. 90% of the vendors out there, 90% of the folks in here, right? You're all hackers. Well, some of you are hackers, even cybersecurity professionals. If you don't like the vendor material, that's why I love coming to these conferences. If you don't like that vendor's material or his tool, what do? You tweak it. right? You come up with your own. That's hacking. That's revolutionary innovation. Okay? And then you can give a talk on that. I've seen so many talks where they use Splunk, they've used whatever tool that's being sold, and they say, hey, I didn't like that output, I didn't like user interface, I didn't like that dashboard, so I tweaked it. And they gave a talk, a 45-minute talk on how they changed it. That's revolutionary innovation. Okay, that's what I'm trying to encourage our government to do more of. Revolutionary innovation. Again, still no numbers. I told you I teach systems engineering at West Point, so I tell all my kids, I need numbers. It's not, this is qualitative analysis. I want quantitative, I want both. Give me some quantitative analysis. So in my case, I look back into 2010, 2011, we'll peek into history, right? I told you, history sometimes can be illuminating. Right? It's not all sci-fi, history can tell us. So this is a revolutionary approach to looking at numbers. Okay, remember the Green Revolt, Arab Spring? Arab revolts? It all started with Tunisia, right? The Tunisian police confiscated the fruits and vegetables of this vendor in the streets. That was the person's livelihood. So instead of complaining about it, the guy lost his livelihood, he set himself on fire. He self-immolated, right? And that sparked, right, protests in 13 other nations. Sure, it wasn't just that event, right? Twitter was big, right? Social media. So again, tying this all back to cyber. And we had WikiLeaks, right? 2010, do you remember WikiLeaks? They published a lot of State Department cables. A lot of our ambassadors, a lot of our embassy folks are telling, a lot of these countries we work for, they're corrupt as heck. We shouldn't be working with them, but we have to, right? They're our partner nation, host nation. But when the people read that, right? The Tunisians read that, when the Algerians read that, Egyptians read that, Yemenis, they read that. The U.S. State Department folks are telling us these kings are corrupt. They're taking our money and spending it on, right, their own apartments. And so that sparked a whole wave of really 6 months. 14 nations revolted. It's amazing. Normally when I see revolts one at a time, right? American independence, French Revolution, it's one at a time. This one, 14 nations revolted all at one time. Anyone who remember successes? Who succeeded in the revolts? Tunisia was the first one. Right, Tunisia, their king had to flee the country. I think they fled to England. It's strange how all these kings flee to England. Egypt, their king fled. He didn't die. The king fled, flew out. I think it was to England again, either France or England. Yemen fell. They're still fighting there, right? There's two rebel groups, big rebel groups, still fighting. But the king fled, so the revolution succeeded. And Libya, in that instance, Gaddafi died 2 years later, right? He couldn't flee in time. So Gaddafi, one of the rebel groups, caught him, and he died 2 years later. So four out of 14. I'm a military guy. Again, revolutions, I count it as the people's war. When the people succeed, that's a revolutionary success. I don't count Egypt as a revolutionary success. It was a military coup. Who's in charge of Egypt now? Yeah, it's military. Aziz took over. He was a colonel or a brigadier general at the time. He took over on the third day of that revolution. So it started as a revolution, but the military took over. Again, as a U.S. military officer, I'm going to make fun of the U.S. military now. We are inefficient. So when, right, we have speakers talking about, yeah, it's easy, right? Central Command, they got hacked into. Yeah, we are inefficient, okay? The U.S. military, our founding fathers did not like this thing called a military coup. They studied it from the Romans, right? What was the problems when Caesar crossed the Rubicon with his legions? Bad things happen, right? The Senate doesn't like it when the Roman legions are right by their doorstep. Yeah, bad things happen. A military coup can take place. So, right, they like sending the legions off to Germania. They like sending Britannica away from Rome, as far away from Rome as possible, so especially if they're a famous general. Because what does the general do in Rome? He feeds the troops. He pays the troops, he clothes the troops, he grants the troops citizenship, right? After they serve a certain number of years, it's the general that grants citizenship to some of those conscripts, right? They beat them, they conscripted them, but if you serve 5 years, wherever it is, you can gain Roman citizenship. It's the general that bestows that, not the Senate. So a lot of those legions pledged loyalty to Caesar, to the generals. Okay, we've all watched one of those movies, Gladiator, Pompeii. Yeah, so there's a lot of them out there, right? So we know about that. So military coups are a bad thing. So our founding fathers said, hey, we don't need the military. We need them to be great at fighting the enemy, but when there's a peacetime, we don't like large standing armies. Decimate the army when it's peacetime. Yeah, we're getting there now. They're sort of decimating us now again. President Trump's kind of ramping it back up, but it's we're sort of trying to decimate it again. I've moved 11 times in the past 22 years of my military career. That's inefficient. Cybersecurity professionals. How long are your CISOs in place? On average? You can hear about that in talks. 36 months? 18 to 36 months? Inefficiency, right? So there's things to be learned about inefficiency. It's not conducive for a good cybersecurity program. If your CISO is rotating out and the entire security staff is rotating out every 2 years, 1 to 2 years, that's probably not too good for getting policies in place, long-term thinking. I always tell my cadets, right, don't let generals do math in public, so do the math for them, because if generals do the math and it's wrong, the general is always going to think his math is right? All military folks know that. So I tell my cadets, do the math for them. So for every one success is about 7%. So in this case, about 21% successful revolutions. And now, I'm not talking about one country. One country's still up in the air. That one's Syria, right? Syria's still up in the air, right? The U.S. is fighting with the rebels, so we're siding with the rebels to fight against Assad, but Russia's supporting Assad. I actually studied counterinsurgencies before I studied cybersecurity. I'm new to this business until I got the ACI. That's my first stint in cyber 2 years ago. I studied counterinsurgencies, right? This past 10, 15 years that we've been fighting counterinsurgencies. Yeah, so I'm more of a counterinsurgency war. Quality then became to match the big three. And then, over time, right, it exceeded the big three in quality. What's the problem now? Who's competing against the Honda Toyota now? Who's the car company that's pretty good now? Hyundai out of South Korea. Same dynamics. It's amazing. So Christensen and Bauer studied this time and time again. The guys in green, right? Today, Hondas and Toyotas are on the green line. They're no longer Revolution. They're on the green line. It's the Hyundais that's displacing Honda and Toyota now. Guess what? Who's displacing Hyundai? Possibly. Any countries? Burgeoning car industries? Kia is still Korea, so it's really South Korea are the new ones. Kia and Hyundai. It's really the same company. Who's nipping at the heels of South Korea now?
Tesla?
Well, yeah, everyone says Tesla to me. Tesla's breakthrough, come on. Tesla has a breakthrough. Tesla's on the blue line. That is not. It's a company called Chery in China. Chery, and then India, it's Tata. Smaller vehicles. Terrible right now. But again, revolution and success, maybe 30% at best. But it's possible, because this, for the car industry, the big three should have figured this out a long time ago. At least car industry, Toyota should have figured this out, right? They displaced the big three. And now Toyota's getting displaced by Kia Hyundai. And possibly Kia Hyundai might get displaced by Chery or Tata. Again, 30% chance, but it's possible. These companies can't figure it out. You want market share, not better cars, right? There's marketing segment. Again, to the best customers, right? Your Lexuses, they have new car companies because they're catering out to the best margins. They're catering out to the best customers. Someone told me we don't have revolutionary innovations today. Anyone still have a BlackBerry? Governments. I have a BlackBerry, right? Government efficiency. No, there's some security features on the BlackBerry still pretty good, right? And BlackBerry now does have its own touch screen. But the iPhone, right? Did you ever see a grandparent with a BlackBerry? So a lot of people tell me it's customization. It's really simplicity. The iPhone brought in simplicity. So grandparents, do you have a cell phone, a smartphone? You know how to use it though, right? It's pretty easy. Simplicity is what Apple brought. That was the initial feature, that one initial feature that appealed to this emerging market. BlackBerry, right? They were wed to that keyboard. At the height of BlackBerries, it was the second year of the Obama administration, right? Crackberry, that's what they called it at the time. They had about 21% market share. They didn't learn, right? You want It's you can get disrupted. So Apple disrupted them, then all these Android devices. BlackBerry RIM's got like 1% market share now. It's tough for them to come back. It's studying revolutions, and counterinsurgency corporate is kind of nice thing for me to study. Again, I do want to highlight once again, it's tough to do breakthroughs, it's tough to do a revolutionary, right? Think 20%, 30% success. Lots of great ideas, most of them don't. But the risks are probably worth taking. And that's what I were talking about in the previous talk. I can list examples after examples. Everywhere I see revolutionary innovations taking place, right? Even in restaurants. I see all of them, right? The biggest restaurants are sustaining, right? If you're a chain restaurant, you're right. If you're a franchisee, that's the green space. Every new restaurant, unless you're a franchisee, every new restaurant is being revolutionary. You're trying to disrupt all the existing markets. You're saying your food, by word of mouth, is better than every restaurant around here. That's tough. Restaurant business, and most of them fail. What about the breakthrough side of restaurants? Any breakthrough restaurants? I'm thinking, right, if I'm not a foodie, but I watch the Food Channel. I see that molecular gastronomy. They're playing around with new techniques of cooking food, right, with freeze-drying things. So I consider that possibly breakthrough. So again, this framework is kind of nice. Just think of innovation in any space. And if you're targeting a certain space, how should you target it in a way that gives you the best success? So how do you best protect cyberspace? I'm focusing on revolutionary. But the reality is we need all innovation. Okay? We need breakthrough, right? Our government does it best with the Air Force and DARPA. Let's keep doing it. Revolutionary, I want this audience here particularly. I want hackers, I want security professionals. If you're not working for the big ones, or if you're not working for IBM, if you're not working for Cisco, if you're not working for Amazon, right? If you're a small base business, you're probably doing revolutionary innovation. So keep doing it. I encourage it. I want our government to start encouraging more revolutionary innovation. We still need to do sustaining and evolutionary innovation as well. We have to do all four. Here's the problem if we don't think about the revolutionary space, though. I'm particularly talking about our government officials, military officers. This is a military officer briefing. Look at all our conflicts where we didn't do too well, starting with the Korean War. Korean War, we lost to the Chinese because the Chinese army moved at night. General MacArthur, again, 1950s technology, his intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance asset was pictures. What film? What's bad with what film technology? Well, yeah, you need light to get the film. So whether or not the Chinese realized it, operating at night, they're big maneuvers. General MacArthur's J2, his intelligence officer, like me, I'm a G2, ground intelligence. His J2, his joint intel officer, consistently underestimated the Chinese military strength by a factor of 10. You can underestimate by a factor of 3 and still get a 50% chance of winning. You can't underestimate by a factor of 10. That's why MacArthur got pushed all the way back down below the 30th parallel. Tough way to fight. Vietnam War, we couldn't stop the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We bombed the heck out of it. The Air Force bombed the heck out of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We put more bombs over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We dropped all of World War II. That's amazing. That's why we had to stop the bombing campaign in '68. We had so many flights, so many bombing campaigns. We lost a lot of pilots. Well, we didn't realize, someone didn't realize, right? When you bomb, when your logistics network doesn't rely on roads initially, what happens when there's a crater in the road? Don't you just walk around it? That's essentially what happened. We bombed the heck out of it. We just walked with the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese, just walked around it. '69, when the bomb campaign stopped, they built roads at that point. That's when we should be bombing, right? When they had road networks. Iraq, Afghanistan, right? IEDs. What does IED stand for? Improvised. It's in the name. It's revolutionary. It's disruptive, right? It's not even a real weapon system. It's improvised a bomb, right? And that's what causes the most damage. It's amazing. Cyber warfare. I know I'm getting out of time. Cyber warfare, my contention. And again, I think Ira sort of brought this out. Not a lot of sophistication in a lot of these tools. I'm arguing the first instance of malware discovered resides in the revolutionary space. And here's very quickly. Again, I told you I'm a military intelligence officer. This is why I think the cyber adversary has a leg up on cyber defense. Look, there's a gap in the white space. Cyber offense resides in this red space, right? Revolution, sustaining, evolutionary innovations. They don't need to do a breakthrough, right? Ira told us they're just finding the holes. Cyber defense, especially in the US, we like that bright, shiny object. Our generals love it, right? We need AI. takes a long time to develop. Same success rates, revolutionary. So if you're a mathematician, 30% success rate for breakthrough. They have a 30% success rate for offensive cyber tools. We're operating in the wrong space, though. It takes too long to develop breakthrough innovations to stop this revolution. And here's my bigger concern. The advanced persistent threats, they're moving into the breakthrough areas. Are we moving into the revolutionary space for cyber defense? Hopefully, with more of Iris talks like that, hopefully we are. I don't think we're moving fast enough. But this is one of my second to last slide. This is my one slide that adheres to normal military slideology. Right? I have words and I have bullet points. So if you want to take a picture of this one slide. All the rest of us are telling a story. If you want to do out-of-the-box thinking, encourage creativity, I like this last point here on that second bullet. Be an early adopter of promising experimentation. You can do all these other three, right? You can do it on your own. You can buy out disruptive companies. You can become an incubator. But the studies have shown, a lot of business schools have studied, this is probably the best way of doing it. You don't have the metrics. Right? Companies that start, Xerox PARC used to be a leading innovator in disruption back in the 70s. It's no longer. It's still around. It's amazing, right? Whenever people talk about Apple, they talk about Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. There are two other guys in the garage. You know who they worked with? They came from Xerox PARC. Xerox PARC shut their idea down on distributed computing systems. Oh, Apple, right? Yeah. Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, they've got the same mind we have. So they quit Xerox PARC, went and worked in Steve Jobs' garage, and created Apple. So no one talks about these Xerox PARC guys. It's kind of amazing. I like to bring that up. Actually, successful in experimentation. So if you're doing experimentation, cheap, right? That's what essentially Ira said. Cheap, fast, lots of them. Okay, if you're thinking that way, the experiments, it's okay to fail when they're cheap. When they're expensive, it's we don't learn the right lesson from expensive failures. This is my last slide. Well, really second to last slide. I have a thank you slide. This is my concern. In conclusion, right? We have a saying in the military. We're very proud of the fact that now we are non-zero defects military, right? We are a non-zero defects military, so it's okay to make mistakes, right? We make mistakes, it's okay. I'm saying that's not good enough for cyber warfare. That is not good enough. I want a military with experimenting frame of mind. We have to consciously experiment, consciously fail. 70% fail, 80%, I'm okay with that, as long as they're fast, cheap experiments. And you're going to learn about it, so don't forget, you're going to learn about this in your biology, chemistry classes in high school. Because when I give this talk to K through 12 students, they tell me they're learning experimentation in chemistry and biology. So don't forget that. We grown-ups have lost that sense of experimentation. Jot down your hypothesis. Run an experiment. See if it works. It's okay if it fails. You're running the experiment. Control group, experiment group. Run the experiment. You might discover something great. I want a military experiment frame of mind, especially for our cyber officers. New branch, 2 years in the making. The great thing is I've been talking to them. We're encouraging this type of training for them. So that's good news to me. And with that, again, as an academician, I like to show all my sources, so I didn't violate any copyrights. But I really want to thank Benny in the back room and his crew, for inviting me down here, giving this talk. And if you want to get a hold of me, there's my email address. I'll be happy to email you these slides. I actually have a couple papers on this. I told you we published a lot in the Army Cyber Institute, so I actually published the paper before I did these slides. And so trying to get these ideas out to our generals, trying to get these ideas out to our leaders. Think about all the revolutionary innovation taking place in this room. I encourage you to continue doing revolutionary innovation. Now, it's okay, I told you, if you work for Microsoft, if you work for an Apple, if you work for Cisco later down the line, it's okay to be doing breakthrough things as well. Okay? Even Google's trying to do one of their projects a day. What are they calling it? What is that group called? Project Zero, is that what it is? They're trying to create the 100 best projects each day, right? I'm thinking they need my framework, because a lot of stuff they're thinking about is in that revolutionary, in the breakthrough space. I want them encouraged still in the revolutionary space. Because the problem they have, I know I'm out of time, but here's this one tip. The military loves giving, even Google, the way they do it is if you had unlimited budget, unlimited resources, what would you come up with? Yeah, of course I would come up with breakthrough ideas. Here's my recommendation. If you have 10 minutes, what would you do? If you had 10 minutes to solve this problem, you're in a time crunch. You got to use what's at your... So instead of giving resources as infinite, take the resource time and make that constrained. If you take constrained time, you're going to get revolutionary innovations. That's my recommendation. So think about that. That's why you have time tests. When you test your time, they want you to think on your feet. Okay? With that, I thank you. I don't think we have time, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions, and I'll be here for the next 2 days as well. So feel free to come up to me and share your ideas, contest my ideas, right? I always have someone in the audience that says, revolutionary ideas don't really exist, and I'll bring up examples after examples. And if you have ideas of your own, I feel free to share them, because I'm developing this talk for future iterations, because I like briefing our military leaders on these ideas. Okay, thank you very much.